She was sitting all alone in a quiet jazz bar, lost in her own pain, until a billionaire leaned down and whispered, "Pretend we came together." From that single moment, her world changed forever. What started as a lie to protect her turned into a love that neither money nor loneliness could ever buy. This is a story of suspense, romance, and the heartwarming lesson that true love sees no status, no wealth, only souls meant to find each other. Natasha sat in the farthest corner of the jazz bar, where shadows lingered like old memories. The dim light from a single lamp above her table painted her face in golden tones, but no one cared to notice. She gently traced the rim of her glass with her fingertip, listening to the saxophone's slow, aching notes drifting through the air. Her golden hair slid over her shoulders like silk, catching hints of the bar's yellow light, but the glow could not brighten her heavy heart. She had chosen the black dress carefully that evening, not too bold, not too plain, just enough to say she tried. But in a room filled with laughter, sparkling drinks, and bright conversations, she was invisible. Everywhere she looked, couples leaned close, whispering and smiling. Glasses clinked, waiters rushed with trays, the smell of expensive wine and perfume mixed in the air. Yet at her table, silence sat beside her like an uninvited guest. She took a sip, the taste bitter, matching the loneliness that burned in her chest. She was only 25, yet life had already taught her how cruel people's words could be. Her family's voice echoed in her head. "You're not good enough, Natasha. Don't expect too much from life." She pressed her lips together, pretending not to hear the echoes, but deep down, they clung to her soul. She had come to the jazz bar that night to escape, to hide from the ache of not belonging anywhere. She thought maybe the music would wrap around her like a blanket. Maybe the crowd's joy would cover her sadness. But instead, every laugh she heard was a reminder of what she didn't have. Her eyes wandered to the couples swaying near the small stage. A man twirled his date, her red dress flowing like fire under the spotlight. Natasha's chest tightened. Was love always meant for others, never for her? She lowered her gaze, clutching her glass tighter. Her reflection in the liquid looked like a stranger, lonely eyes, painted lips trying too hard to smile. Her heart longed for someone, anyone, to notice her, not for her dress, not for her face, not for what she could offer, but for her soul. She wanted someone to look into her eyes and see her pain, someone to say, "You matter." Yet every second that passed reminded her how invisible she was. The saxophone grew louder, a haunting tune that filled the room with longing. It felt as if the music itself was weeping with her. She shifted in her seat, trying to look relaxed, like she belonged, but her chest ached with heaviness. Her fingers tapped nervously on the table, betraying the storm inside her. People walked past her, their perfumes trailing, their laughter like knives cutting deeper into her silence. She tried not to look desperate, tried not to show how much she yearned for someone to simply sit beside her. The waiter passed her table again without a word, his tray heavy with drinks for others. Natasha forced a smile. Though no one met her eyes. Why did I even come here, she thought. Why did I think tonight would be different? But deep inside, a small flicker of hope refused to die. A whisper in her heart said, "Stay. Something could change." And so she sat, still and quiet, unaware that destiny was about to shift her world, because in just a moment, a stranger's shadow would fall across her table. A voice she had never heard before would whisper the words that would change her life forever. But Natasha didn't know that yet. For now, she was just the lonely girl in the corner, waiting for something she couldn't name, in a world that hadn't yet shown her she was worth loving. The jazz bar hummed with music and chatter, but Natasha's world stilled the moment a shadow fell across her lonely table. She froze, her fingers tightening around her glass. Slowly, she lifted her gaze. And there he was, Michael. He stood tall, his presence commanding in a way that silenced the noise around him. His broad shoulders filled the space, his tailored suit fitting him like it had been stitched by destiny itself. But it wasn't the suit that captured Natasha's breath. It was his eyes. They were stormy, intense, yet softened with something she couldn't name, a quiet tenderness, a secret sadness. Her heart skipped a beat, racing faster than the rhythm of the saxophone. For a moment, she thought he would simply pass by, like every other stranger who had never noticed her. But instead, he leaned closer, his cologne brushing against her senses, warm, earthy, unforgettable. And then he spoke. "Pretend we came together," he whispered. His voice was velvet, low, intimate. Words meant only for her. Natasha blinked, stunned. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Why? Why would he say that? Before she could question, her instincts betrayed her. She nodded, as if her soul had already agreed before her mind caught up. Michael slid smoothly into the seat beside her, his presence shielding her like a wall against the world. His arm rested casually on the back of her chair, as if they were lovers. But his eyes told her it was more than an act. It was protection. Out of the corner of her eye, Natasha noticed the two men at the nearby table. They had been watching her earlier with unsettling interest. Now, the moment Michael appeared, they shifted uncomfortably, muttered something under their breath, and looked away. Her breath caught in her throat. Realization struck. This wasn't random. This man had noticed. He had stepped in for her. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with confusion. Who was he? Why would a man like him, so strong, so sure, so out of her league, care about a woman sitting alone in a corner? Natasha's mind raced. Was he just being kind? Was this some sort of trick? But no, his eyes held no mockery, no arrogance. They were steady, protective, almost wounded, like he knew exactly what it felt like to sit in silence, praying not to be noticed for the wrong reasons. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The closeness of him, the warmth of his presence, the sheer mystery of his sudden appearance. It wrapped around her like the jazz melody itself, low and haunting. She wanted to ask him everything at once. Why me? Who are you? What are you doing here? But her throat was dry, her words stuck. Instead, she stared at him, her cheeks warming under his gaze. Michael leaned back slightly, giving her space but never breaking eye contact. His lips curved in the faintest smile, as if to say, "You're safe now. Don't worry." The tension in her shoulders eased, just a little. For the first time that night, Natasha didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and yet the mystery deepened. Who was this man? This stranger who could silence danger with a glance, who could change the rhythm of her night with 6 whispered words. "Pretend we came together." The words echoed in her chest, carving themselves into her memory. Her lonely evening had just turned into something she couldn't explain. Something thrilling. Something dangerous. Something that felt like the beginning of everything. The waiter placed 2 glasses of deep red wine on the table, the liquid glowing under the bar's soft light. Michael lifted 1 glass, handed it to Natasha with a steady hand, and smiled. A smile so effortless it looked like it had belonged to him all night. To anyone watching, they were not strangers. They were a couple wrapped in their own bubble, untouched by the chatter, the music, or the curious stares around them. It looked natural, as if they had walked into the bar together, chosen this table, and lived 1,000 stories before this night. But Natasha's nerves wouldn't calm. Her pulse was quick, her fingers restless against the glass. She sipped slowly, trying to appear collected, but inside she trembled with questions. Finally, unable to keep the storm inside, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Michael's expression shifted. His jaw tightened, and for a moment shadows crossed his face. His eyes softened, though, holding hers with a truth so raw it cut through her doubts. "Because I know what it feels like," he said quietly, "to be alone in a crowded room." The words struck her like lightning. He said them with such weight, such honesty, that Natasha's breath caught. How could a man like him, a man who looked like he owned the world, ever know loneliness? She studied him closely, trying to piece him together. He carried himself with confidence, his suit flawless, his manner commanding. Yet behind his calm smile, his eyes told another story, a story of isolation, of weariness, of nights spent wondering if anyone cared for the man he truly was. That night, Michael let pieces of his truth slip through. Natasha learned that he wasn't just anyone. He was 35. The owner of companies so large she had only ever seen their names on billboards, on shining buildings downtown. A billionaire, a man who had everything people dreamed of. But the more he revealed, the less the wealth seemed to matter. What struck Natasha wasn't the scale of his power. It was the loneliness in his voice when he admitted it. "It doesn't matter how many people surround you when none of them really see you," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the wine as though it carried his memories. He told her about the constant weight of expectations, how people came into his life with smiles, but always with hands open, waiting to take something. Deals, favors, money, power. Everyone wanted from him, but not him. Never the man behind the fortune. His words sank deep into Natasha's heart. She saw the truth in the shadows of his face, in the way his fingers tapped against the glass like he carried 1,000 unsaid stories. And for the first time in years, Natasha didn't feel so alone. Here was a man whose world was nothing like hers, lavish, powerful, untouchable, and yet his scars mirrored her own. She leaned forward slightly, her golden hair brushing her shoulders, and whispered, "I know that feeling." Michael's eyes lifted to hers. For a moment, the noise of the jazz bar vanished. The music faded, the crowd disappeared, and it was only the two of them, holding on to a truth no one else could see. Natasha felt her heart open in ways it hadn't in years. She wasn't sitting with a billionaire. She was sitting with a soul who carried pain like hers. And in that fragile moment, a connection sparked, quiet, unspoken, but undeniable. For the first time, she felt someone truly understood. And for the first time in a long while, Michael's guarded heart let someone in. The night stretched on, the music weaving its slow magic around them. Natasha found herself laughing at Michael's quiet humor, little remarks that made her feel seen, cherished, almost safe. Her laughter was soft, but it lit her face in a way that drew Michael in, made him admire her even more. Michael's eyes softened whenever she smiled, as though he was watching something rare, something worth more than all the treasures his fortune could buy. Natasha leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, her cheeks still warm from laughing. For the first time in months, she forgot her loneliness. The world outside the bar didn't exist. It was just her and Michael, two souls discovering each other under the dim glow of the jazz lights. But fate has a way of breaking moments that feel too perfect. Just as Natasha thought the night would close with comfort and peace, a shift disturbed the air around them. A figure approached their table. Heavy steps, a presence that didn't carry warmth but something colder, sharper. Natasha's chest tightened when she recognized him. One of the men who had been watching her earlier. His eyes were heavy with arrogance, his mouth twisted in a mocking grin. He leaned slightly toward Natasha, ignoring Michael, his voice laced with poison. "Is this guy bothering you?" The words dripped with sarcasm, meant to humiliate, meant to put her on the spot. Natasha froze, her pulse spiking. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. The air felt heavy, pressing down on her chest. But Michael moved before she could find her voice. He rose from his seat with a calmness that felt more powerful than anger. His shoulders straightened, his height suddenly overwhelming, his presence changing in an instant. From the gentle man sharing wine to a protector who would let nothing harm her. His voice was steady, commanding, with no need to shout. "She's with me." The words were simple, but they carried weight like thunder rolling across the room. The man froze, his mocking grin slipping into uncertainty. For a moment he tried to hold Michael's gaze, but it was useless. Michael's eyes, stormy, unwavering, cut through him like steel. Recognition flickered across the man's face. The arrogance drained, replaced by fear. He knew who stood before him. Michael wasn't just any man. He was someone powerful, someone untouchable. The tension lasted only seconds, but to Natasha it felt like the entire bar had gone silent, waiting for the outcome. And then, just like that, the man retreated. His steps quick, his head lowered, his false bravado shattered. In seconds, he disappeared into the crowd. Natasha sat frozen, breathless. Her fingers clutched the edge of the table as her heart pounded. She turned slowly to Michael, who stood tall beside her, his expression calm, but his jaw tight, as if holding back a storm. He hadn't acted for show. He hadn't done it to impress. He had stood between her and danger without hesitation, without asking, without needing thanks. In that instant, Natasha saw the truth of him. Not the billionaire, not the man in the sharp suit, but the protector, the man who carried strength in silence, the man who would not let her be harmed. Her chest ached, something inside her cracking wide open. She had lived so long unseen, unprotected, uncared for. And now, here was a stranger who treated her safety as if it were his responsibility. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Not of fear, not of sadness, but of something else, something deeper. She whispered softly, almost trembling, "You didn't have to do that." Michael's gaze softened as he sat down again. His hand brushed against hers, steady, grounding. "Yes, I did," he said. And in that moment, Natasha's world shifted. What began as a whisper of pretend was slowly becoming something real. The jazz music slowed into a softer rhythm, almost like a lullaby, and the bar seemed to quiet around them. Conversations faded into the background, glasses clinked more gently, and the dim lights softened. It felt as though the universe had lowered its voice just for them. Natasha sat frozen, her heart racing, not from fear anymore, but from the magnetic pull of the man across from her. Michael's storm-gray eyes never once drifted away from her. He watched her as if she were the only person in the room, as if the world itself had shrunk to just their table. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling as she whispered, "You didn't have to do all this." Michael didn't hesitate. His hand slid gently across the table, brushing against hers. The moment his skin touched her, warmth spread through her veins, steady and comforting. His hand didn't grip too tightly. It simply rested there, grounding her, assuring her. "I wanted to," he said softly. His voice was deep but tender, carrying no arrogance, only truth. "From the second I saw you sitting here alone, I knew I couldn't let the night pass without meeting you." The words melted into her heart. Natasha stared at him, her chest tightening with emotions she hadn't let herself feel in years. For a moment, silence stretched between them. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was charged, alive, like the pause before a kiss, like the moment just before rain breaks the sky. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the music. Every breath felt heavy with unspoken longing. Michael leaned closer, his presence overwhelming but gentle. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper, meant only for her. "I came here tonight to escape, but instead I found you." The words wrapped around Natasha's soul, tender and unshakable. Her lips parted, though no words came out. Her chest rose and fell quickly, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his tone. For years, she had doubted her worth. She had believed the voices that told her she wasn't enough, that she was ordinary, forgettable. But now, in Michael's eyes, she saw something she never thought she would: value. Not for her dress, not for her face, not for what she could give, but for her, just her. Michael's thumb brushed against the back of her hand, slowly, almost reverently. The touch wasn't rushed, wasn't careless. It was deliberate, as though he was memorizing the feel of her. Natasha felt tears press at the corners of her eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from the overwhelming beauty of the moment, from the terrifying and exhilarating thought that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't pretend anymore. Her voice broke when she finally whispered, "Why me?" Michael's eyes softened, his lips curving in the faintest smile. "Because when I looked at you, I didn't just see someone sitting alone. I saw someone I wanted to know. someone I didn't want to walk away from. Her breath hitched. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to her like that, without condition, without expectation. The air between them grew heavier, filled with the unspoken truth neither had yet dared to say. It felt as though the universe had lowered its voice just for them. Natasha sat frozen, her heart racing, not from fear anymore, but from the magnetic pull of the man across from her. Michael's storm-gray eyes never once drifted away from her. He watched her as if she were the only person in the room, as if the world itself had shrunk to just their table. She swallowed hard, her lips trembling as she whispered, "You didn't have to do all this." Michael didn't hesitate. His hand slid gently across the table, brushing against hers. The moment his skin touched her, warmth spread through her veins, steady and comforting. His hand didn't grip too tightly. It simply rested there, grounding her, assuring her. "I wanted to," he said softly. His voice was deep but tender, carrying no arrogance, only truth. "From the second I saw you sitting here alone, I knew I couldn't let the night pass without meeting you." The words melted into her heart. Natasha stared at him, her chest tightening with emotions she hadn't let herself feel in years. For a moment, silence stretched between them. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was charged, alive, like the pause before a kiss, like the moment just before rain breaks the sky. Every heartbeat echoed louder than the music. Every breath felt heavy with unspoken longing. Michael leaned closer, his presence overwhelming but gentle. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper, meant only for her. "I came here tonight to escape, but instead I found you." The words wrapped around Natasha's soul, tender and unshakable. Her lips parted, though no words came out. Her chest rose and fell quickly, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his tone. For years, she had doubted her worth. She had believed the voices that told her she wasn't enough, that she was ordinary, forgettable. But now, in Michael's eyes, she saw something she never thought she would: value. Not for her dress, not for her face, not for what she could give, but for her, just her. Michael's thumb brushed against the back of her hand, slowly, almost reverently. The touch wasn't rushed, wasn't careless. It was deliberate, as though he was memorizing the feel of her. Natasha felt tears press at the corners of her eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from the overwhelming beauty of the moment, from the terrifying and exhilarating thought that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't pretend anymore. Her voice broke when she finally whispered, "Why me?" Michael's eyes softened, his lips curving in the faintest smile. "Because when I looked at you, I didn't just see someone sitting alone. I saw someone I wanted to know. Someone I didn't want to walk away from." Her breath hitched. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to her like that, without condition, without expectation. The air between them grew heavier, filled with the unspoken truth neither had yet dared to say. Natasha's heart pounded, her doubts fighting against the hope blooming inside her. But the hope was stronger. For the first time in her life, she felt chosen. And as she sat there, her hand cradled in Michael's, she realized something undeniable. What had started as an act, pretending, was turning into something breathtakingly real. Something she had never thought she would find. Something that felt like love waiting to be born. When they finally left the jazz bar, Natasha walked beside Michael, not as the lonely girl she had been hours ago, but as a woman who had been seen. The billionaire and the girl from nowhere, two people from different worlds, found what neither money nor loneliness could give: genuine connection. Weeks later, they were inseparable. Michael would often tease her, whispering again, "Pretend we came together." But Natasha always smiled and answered, "No need to pretend anymore." Their love taught everyone around them that society's walls, class, wealth, status, meant nothing in the face of true connection. The lesson was simple but powerful. Love is not about background, money, or reputation. It's about two souls finding each other in a world that often looks away. And that night in the jazz bar proved it.